Jack Devnarain rose to prominence on South African television, playing the role of Rajesh Kumar on Isidingo, one of the SABC's top-performing local shows. He has since expanded into corporate work and NPO leadership, serving as the chair of the SA Guild of Actors, whose focus is on NPO governance, fair industry trade, and building a strong creative economy. Today, we talk to him about his journey and unpack his transition from front of the screen, being on the screen, to behind the scenes industry leadership. Welcome to the NPO Bootcamp Arts and Culture Edition. Good morning, Jack, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited, and it's such a treat for me to be able to speak to one of my all-time favorite Isidingo actors. So maybe let's start with the very beginning and how you came into the space.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the introduction. That was beautiful. My journey, I think, began when I knew intuitively that I was a performer. And you know this as a child. It's not something that you need to invent for yourself. You know that when you express yourself, somehow the manner in which you do that has an impact on people around you. For performers, the people around you happen to be your family and your most enduring audience. And I somehow knew that I was going to find myself in a performance world. I suppose the difference is, growing up in the early 70s, coming through primary school and then high school in the 80s, you don't really see, well, certainly not in South Africa, there wasn't a realistic prospect of saying, I'm going to be a professional actor. That wasn't a career option open to us in those years. But when you are passionate about something to the point where you intuitively understand the mechanics of performance, and you understand the sensibility that you need to have in order to become, a performer, regardless of being a professional. You don't need to be a professional to be an actor, but certainly you have the sensibility to understand what skills you need.
Okay.
And that was my journey coming into high school. I studied speech and drama. I went into university studying law, but within that, I also made time to continue my drama studies, which was a wonderful time in our life in South Africa as well, looking at the early 90s and realizing that storytelling plays a critical role in how we start to engage with each other as an integrated nation, bringing together the different language groups, cultures, understanding each other's races and our histories, and being able to create a context for integration through storytelling.
All right.
And that became very important to me.
But can I butt in there, Jack? So you knew intuitively from when you were a child that you wanted to act, but you choose to study law. Help me understand why.
Whichever way you look at law, I think you have to have an appreciation for reading.
Okay.
Literacy.
Yes, absolutely.
Each case study that you read is a story in itself. And there are people who are brought into conflict. And if you look at it in dramatic terms, you have a protagonist, you have an antagonist, you have a conflict that needs to be resolved between them. Isn't that the basics of a story?
Absolutely.
So whether
It makes sense.
Whether you look at it as an act of law, or some litigation that takes place in front of a courtroom, even that becomes a story. So, however you choose to unpack the human condition, whether you are influenced by important members in your community or in your family who say, I think you should do law, or whether you are a kid in the 80s watching LA Law on TV, you are surrounded by the stimuli that are telling you, if you have the sensibility for this, maybe it's something you should pursue.
Okay, but now you complete the studies and then you join the police force in Durban.
I had only gone up as far as my undergrad degree.
Okay, meaning you didn't do the postgrad LLB?
I didn't do LL.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's a part of me that says that was probably the best thing I had never done.
The best thing you'd never done. Okay, right?
Yeah, and it's not to say that I don't still have an appetite for the knowledge. I do. I think it's at that time in my life and the circumstances that I was living in, it became far more important to me to play a more active role, firstly as an income provider for my home, but also what was going on in the world around us at that time. We were talking about 1993, 94, and we were trying to create a new way of living in South Africa. We were trying to establish a new way of understanding each other, of understanding that this person who was not allowed to ride on that bus or to sit on that bench or couldn't swim in that pool and wasn't allowed to walk on that beach. We were now trying to undo that. But where does it start? And at the time, law enforcement had a lot to do because law itself and law enforcement starts off as part of a social compact. You have the law on the one side and you have a community that has to comply with those laws. But what if the community never chose those laws? And what if the community was subject to the laws and were not protected by those laws? And there was a profound distrust between that community and the law and the people who were tasked to enforce that unpopular law.
Absolutely.
So
you joined the force at a very tricky, treacherous time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And of course, I may have been politically naive, but certainly I was aware of the frictions that was taking place as we were trying to discover each other. And I think that became the guiding moment for why I chose the police and law enforcement. Firstly, there was a difference in how we called ourselves or how we moved ourselves from a police force into a police service. That was a profound distinction that had to be made. And I wanted to be part of a service, not necessarily a force. You needed to use force. And certainly, if there's any policeman or policewoman who intends to be effective in their work, you absolutely have to understand the use of force. In fact, you develop that as a kind of a language because there are people on the other side who absolutely use force and violence as a language. And the only language that they understand is violence.
Absolutely.
So it's in a funny way, in the world that I occupy, communication is everything, whether it's through the written mode or a performance or something we post on social media or just as you and I are speaking now. There are still people around us who can only understand the world in terms of who exerts violence and force and who are the victims of that.
You're so right, but it's so tragic, hey, Jack?
Yeah.
So if you look back, how much time did you spend in the police service?
It was nearly 10 years.
Nearly 10 years. And what would you say was the most trying experience for you during that time?
It was coming to terms with the brutality of violence and how it's perpetrated upon innocent people and how they have to try and reconstruct their lives. You and I grow up in a comfortable family home in a neighborhood, and there'll be the corner shop and there'll be the bus and there'll be the school and all these very convenient, comfortable things. And there are challenges, of course, but we manage them as a family. But then you have something that completely shatters the reality that you've created for yourself. It utterly breaks you and ruins all those relationships. It steals something from you out of the essence of your being and the sanctity of your home. That's what violence does. And you have to try and reconstruct something, a version of your previous life. And for me, as a policeman, you've got to witness these things unfold. Sometimes you are trying to mitigate the damage perpetrated by violent criminals. And you're trying to help this victim piece together the shards of their shattered life. But at the same time, in exercising your duties, you inadvertently end up causing damage as well.
Jack, this conversation, you're just stressing me out. Now I know why I don't watch crime dramas. Just listening to you, I'm like, oh my goodness, it's heavy, right? It's heavy.
People who produce crime stories are a joke.
Is it?
I view that as comedy.
That's not the real thing.
I mean, I look at policemen being portrayed on TV and I think, you have no idea how to hold that gun. You should rather put it away before you hurt yourself.
Yeah.
People have no idea, what simple everyday tactics are. People don't know why a firearm is carried in a certain way, or we do things for effect on TV and in performance. And unfortunately, it's created generations of people who are fascinated and attracted by the romance of being part of this elite fighting unit. You have no idea what it takes. You have no idea what it is like to have to clean up the road after, a terrible accident, or you picking up the pieces of someone or of something that used to be a human being.
No, that's too stressful. That's way too stressful. So you did this for 10 years, Jack. You did this for 10 years. And then how does your path then now weave into Isidingo?
Well, I was always performing, even during those 10 years in the police. Whenever there were opportunities on stage, or you'd get the occasional little commercial that comes up, or a gap on a feature film. There was not a lot happening in Durban at that time.
So you were plugged into the system. You were working with an agent or somebody that was sending you for auditions.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's right. So I was getting an insight into the mechanics of the industry, but certainly not at the level that the industry was working at. It was a version of how the industry works.
Okay.
But it worked for Durban, and Durban can hardly claim to be one of the nuclear points of the industry itself. Certainly, there's a lot of investment going into it now. But back then, I can remember for 30 years, people would be saying, Durban is going to flourish. It's going to be the center of film and television production. And I mean, people said that for 30 years. Even today, we are still waiting for Anand Singh to build his, mythical studios on the Durban beachfront. But you tend not to hold your breath for that. And you realize very quickly that in the freelance world, if you are not hustling away for yourself, you should rather not bother. You have to find opportunities. In fact, there's a beautiful line by Sir Walter Raleigh who said, man must make his opportunities as oft as find them.
I like that. It appeals to me. But in this space and in a lot of other spaces, Jack, there are gatekeepers everywhere. You have to go through casting, auditions, and that's a closed space. So if you're on the outside trying to get in, it can be pretty difficult.
Yeah, it is.
Irrespective of how resourceful you might be.
Yeah.
So are you telling us that's how you got into Isidingo? How did that call happen for you?
Yeah, I think let's pick that up in sequence. Yes, there are gatekeepers even now. It's also a place where sexual predators like to hide. That's why, there's such a thing as the casting couch, and the fact that we can even put a name to it is shocking and utterly humiliating for us to have to think that there is such a phenomenon. So yeah, there are gatekeepers. They are selfish and afraid individuals who like to protect what they have and put a premium on the entry fee. So if you're going to enter my world, I'm going to hold that gate and make it costly for you, because I'm so terrified that as a talentless human being that I have nothing else to offer but keep the gate closed. So one of the ways to get through that, aside from exposing them, is to be that kind of talent that even they can't ignore. And usually they will then try to go out of their way to say, I'm going to make a space for you. And then for you to use the opportunity to break that gate wide open and to make sure that the talent pool is widened. Then moving on to the Isidingo phase of my life, I don't think anyone can ever be ready to walk onto a set with people like the late Michelle Portis and Robert Whitehead and Darlington Michaels and Nwangeni Nawa.
When you recite the names like that, I didn't realize how many of them have passed away.
I know. That's right. Those were established icons before I even walked onto that set. But I was eager. The opportunity came up. It was, would you believe it, an advert in the local paper in Durban.
in the KZN newspaper.
Yeah, and they requested a portfolio, and I was very happy that at that point I had done just about enough work that I could put into a very short show and send it to them. And they said that they would take me up for an audition. And who knows what happens, what magic takes place, where it would have been a small pool anyway. There really weren't that many actors to choose from. So I suppose that they decided to work with somebody that they thought they could help to mold into a character. And coming into that space, it was literally the it was the epitome of South African television production at its highest form, with the very best writers and head writers and production staff and technical crew and creative talent as well. So there was a massive intimidation factor that I had to overcome within myself, and to understand and trust that the people who had cast me placed their faith and confidence in. So very early on, I had to make the decision about what was it that I wanted, and what did I want to communicate, and why was it important that I was there. And the first thing I realized was I choose this for the rest of my life, as I thought then. I choose this. And I asked myself, do I want to go back to being a policeman and having to confront the strife and the conflict and the violence and the bureaucracy and the administration and the court cases and the broken pieces? And I said, well, if this is my moment to change the course of my life, then I choose it with all my heart.
So where is this process unfolding? Is it in Durban? You're commuting up to Joburg? How is all this working?
Yeah, for about 3 or 4 months, I had to commute.
And how are you managing this with a full-time job in the police service?
I had taken unpaid leave.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I applied for unpaid leave. And I suppose, going through the transition that the police force was going through then, there was an amalgamation process taking place with all the different boroughs and municipalities in the greater Durban area. So people were so obsessed about trying to take the next step in the rank system.
In the police force?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I suppose they didn't really care that there's this one of these cop guys wants to take up a role as an actor. Just give him what he wants. So
As in authorize the unpaid leave so he
That's
can go
right.
do his thing.
you don't easily get unpaid.
Okay.
Not easy. In fact, I had done that already. I had applied for unpaid leave when I had an opportunity to do a TV series called 37 Honey Street.
Mhm.
That was in 1998.
Mhm.
And it was my very first experience of shooting a TV series in Johannesburg. I had applied for unpaid leave, and the chief constable at the time said, "You want to go and act for 2 months in Johannesburg?" I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Well, no." I said, "Well, so the alternative is that I apply for my annual leave, and then you're going to pay me while I go up to Joburg to shoot for 2 months."
You had that much annual leave?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't. I went AWOL.
Okay.
But they had already knew because I had applied for the unpaid leave.
Mhm.
But it reminded me that there are people who are not going to be as forgiving or as cooperative or who shared in my vision,
Right.
even though it was a passion. I mean, at the time, the senior management in the police were particularly obstructive. They came from a certain way of thinking about the world. So for me to say that, I'm a trained actor, I have this opportunity, I'm asking for unpaid leave, was, quite outlandish for them. So they declined it. The irony is that I ended up taking the leave and going on unpaid. I had even offered, I said, with the money that I earn from this TV series, I will donate that to the community chest of Durban.
Wow.
And I put that in writing in my application. I said, this is my commitment and what the opportunity means to me. And they declined that as well. So I said, well, I have no problem going AWOL if this is the kind of
people that
obstructionism that you,
So it's a 3 to 4 month process to land the position. And then they tell you, yes, you're going to work with you. Then you need to pack up from Durban and move to Joburg.
Yeah, you move house, you move province, you move your life.
So to pick up, uproot your whole family up to Johannesburg. Very good. This is 2002 when we start with Isidingo. So that ran, you were telling me you were on Isidingo for 15 years up until 2017. What were some of the highlights for you of working on Isidingo?
I realized for the first time what impact TV has on people's lives on a daily basis. It's not something that I fully understood. Yes, I used to watch a bit of TV before I became a full-time actor, but it never occurred to me. What must it be like to be one of those people that you see on TV, that you automatically, you ascribe to them levels of you elevate them in your estimation of them. This person has got to be special. Not because they do anything special, but because they're on TV. So that must automatically mean that this is a really special human being. And then you become one of them. And then you spend the rest of your life trying to tell everybody, but I'm no more special than you are. Just because this is my job doesn't make me any better a human being. It doesn't make me, I don't have any special qualities. I don't live by any values that are different to yours. And the other thing I realized is that the moment you get somebody to understand that, you steal something from them.
Explain.
There are people who need to see others as being special.
Okay. All right.
They need it. I don't know why. I can't explain it. But there are people who absolutely derive a sense of reassurance and joy in that there's this special person and they're somebody important.
And I'm not.
Yeah. So it's a way that you aspire. It gives a sense of hope, I think, that you know that there are people out there that live a better life than I do. And then you meet them, and then it's incredible that this person actually connected with you in that moment. The person I used to see on TV, or the person I saw on TV last night, is now standing in front of me. And you can see them, they tremble with excitement.
For real?
They tremble. Some people, some people cry. And the last thing you want to do, if you have a heart inside you, is to tell them, hey, we're the same.
You know, I think I get the point that you're making. When you see somebody on TV, and I was like that when I saw people on TV, it's really aspirational. And these are people that are well-dressed, they're well-spoken, they're living their best life. And to your point, maybe sometimes living a better life than what you are doing. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, no, I get that point. So let's come back to the set and the camaraderie on set and who some of the characters were that you enjoyed working with.
The characters on Isidingo were written into different worlds. So I was part of the Barker Haynes world. I wonder if you remember Barker Haynes, right? The arch-villain, played by Robert Whitehead. So I was part of that world, and then there was the Matabane household, and there was a different world, and then there was, the pub, the rec club in that world. So with all those worlds, we were limited in how we engaged with each other across the entire cast. But what I had was a fascinating mix of the people who came into and out of the corporate world that I occupied as Rajesh Kumar. So it was lovely to be able to work with Michelle Portis, the late Michelle Portis. And of course, people always remember the love affair that never really, found its full expression with the late Ashley Kelly.
Played Lee Haynes.
Lee Haynes, you
remember? That's a bit fuzzy for me. I was trying to figure out, were you guys an item or not? But was Rajesh Kumar not married to Priya?
Later on, yes.
Okay, before Priya, there was the
Yeah.
Okay.
It was one of those typically soapy kind of relationships where the 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 obvious love could never be fully realized. It was never meant to be.
That is so interesting because I really, really enjoyed Ashley Kelly also. And one of the reasons why you were my favorite, Rajesh Kumar was my favorite guy, was just how he stood up to the bullying of Barker Haynes.
Right.
And when I looked at the interaction between Lee and Rajesh, Lee, in spite of Barker, the bully being her dad, was a very principled lady. She wanted to do the right. She wanted to do right in all times.
Yeah.
So for me, that was an interesting conflict. It was also a standing up to her dad in a way. So that's why those two characters, I'm drawn to the goody two shoes.
I can see that, yes. Yeah. So that, I think, was it that's what made Rajesh a household name, being part of that family of characters. And I still have very, very close relationships with Brandon Orett, who played Dupe, the cop, and Kim Engelbrecht.
Yes, Lolly.
Lolly,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
Chris Beasley, who played Len.
Yes. Fascinating characters, those,
Yeah. All of them. Ruby and Boya. They're all very, very dear to me. And there was a lot going on at the time, and I think this is where I made a very slow but gradual and a very determined transition into being an activist, because you put a group of actors together and they're always going to complain about the contracts that we sign.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have a full grasp of what is the problem in our industry as actors. Why are we complaining so much? And it started me on a journey to understanding where the failure points of the industry lie. And I think that's what brought me finally into SAGA. And SAGA informs much of the work that I do now. I probably have more screen time talking about SAGA nowadays than I did being in character.
So if you could help us understand the SA Guild of Actors, what are they about? What are they trying to achieve? What is the mission?
SAGA is a non-profit organization, and we function almost like a union, but because of the Labor Relations Act, we can only create and operate a guild for now. That's going to change. But we represent actors' rights in contractual rights, financial, economic, commercial, and their earning rights. So we help actors to understand what the problems are, and then we distill these problems into messaging that we use to help government understand that the creative sector cannot continue in the way it is functioning now, where producers and broadcasters have unilateral authority in creating contracts that favor them only. So the reason I say that it can never be sustainable is because creatives need to earn a residual income. And it's essential that creatives actually have these contracts that reflect their commercial rights and their residual rights. In fact, actors like me should be earning royalties from the work that we've done over the course of an entire career. Now, if you take away those royalty rights, what it means is that all you will ever earn is what you earn for today. So today's work is what will pay you today. And if you don't have work tomorrow, then you face the utter and complete and catastrophic collapse of your earnings.
I get that, Jack, but I think that's just one part of it. And I think because you came from an environment where you were a full-time employee in the police service, you will understand the difference between a full-time employment and what shifts like when you become an actor, a presenter, or crew. It is not full-time fixed employment that you wake up and go to every day and get a fixed amount of money. And I think that's something that a lot of people that aspire to be in the industry don't quite get. That this is flexible work. It's not guaranteed monthly income. So, and I think for us as outsiders, when you look and you hear about an actor that's passed on and they're struggling, you wonder, but what did you do with the money?
Correct.
But you don't really understand that this is not a person that is getting a fixed monthly salary. It's a gig. So Does SAGA want to talk to part of that, or is it just about the rights and the kind of like the royalty issue? Because there are multiple parts of the equation.
Very true. Yes, very true. And it's important that people understand what that freelance industry means, as you described very well. So we have to, as much as we know that the industry in South Africa and around the world, there will always be an irregular income. It'll always be irregular because you will go from one gig to the next, depending on whether you can land the job or not. And there isn't always a soapie to sustain your life. And there isn't always a movie or a TV commercial that's going to give you the next paycheck. But what you need is the basic protections under labor law that guarantee that even when you are working, that there are certain basic things in place.
Such as?
Your working hours, and if you're going to be working overtime, that you'll be paid for it.
And right now that doesn't exist.
It does not exist.
Okay.
Because in South Africa, as freelancers, we are excluded from the basic conditions of employment, from the Labor Relations Act, from, compensation for occupational injuries and diseases.
And what are the reasons for that?
I think it was an oversight. At the time that from 1994, you're talking about the revisions to labor laws in South Africa. Essentially, what our lawmakers had in mind was how to protect the basic rights of people who are generating an income that has an impact on the GDP. You're looking at the big sectors like mining, manufacturing, freight, agriculture. These people or these sectors used to employ tens and tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people. And the employment of these people meant that they were able now to use that income so that they would be active consumers. That would make a dent on the economy. That would uplift economic outlooks. It would help to direct the way we plan from our fiscus. But if the creative sector, being as it is, it wasn't generating as much that would contribute to the economy. Back then. Yeah.
Not now.
Not at all. So now we're trying to play catch up, because now you're looking at issues of intellectual property rights and streaming and social media and the digital economy. And what it does now is we have more ways now to create and consume audiovisual content that we've ever had in the history of humanity.
Absolutely.
And having created that for ourselves, and let's understand that this is also evolving at a rapid rate in a technological sense. You've got things like artificial intelligence that can create entire movies now. So because we never took the time back then, at the time that we were trying to give some leverage, some negotiating power to the most vulnerable workers from the early 90s, we sidelined the creative sector completely, only to realize 30 years later that we missed the boat back then. And now we've got to try and create some kind of a regulatory structure. But we've created an entire culture where people don't realize that this is a creative economy. And a creative economy needs to be regulated. And there are a lot of people who are saying, if we try to regulate the sector, that we are going to disincentivize investment. And it's actually quite the contrary. Investors look to mitigate risk. Investors look for certainty. They look for reassurance. And they try to invest in creative products where people are not being exploited openly and abused, or where people fall to their death off the edge of a waterfall.
Because there's no recourse.
And there's no recourse. And I think that it's a very important point that you bring up, because currently, as a freelancer, if there is a dispute that arises, you are not allowed to take your dispute for resolution to the CCMA.
Because you are not under the jurisdiction of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act.
And the LRA. So this is a massive failure that SAGA is pointing to, and we have provided the proposals to government. And let's be very specific, who has to preside over this. This is specifically the Department of Employment and Labor.
Okay.
Because
not the Department of Arts and Culture.
Correct.
Because the Department of Labor is the one that deals with employment legislation.
Absolutely.
And that's what you're trying to fix. But if I look at that, Jack, trying to deal with any kind of legislation is a very long-term process.
Yes.
So in the short term, what are the benefits of being a part of SAGA?
SAGA is a very powerful resource to help actors understand the contracts that are presented to them. What are the dangers and the pitfalls? What to try to negotiate. Let's be very clear. Actors don't have negotiating power in this country. Until we create a system of unionization that would be permitted under a revised Labor Relations Act, we don't have any kind of leverage whatsoever. And that's what makes South Africa an anomaly compared to the rest of the world. When you look at creative sectors around the world, you see that they are regulated according to collective bargaining rights. And a collective bargaining process involves a union representative that sits in negotiation with representatives from producers and broadcasters. Those are seen as the employers. Now, until we are able to replicate that in South Africa, where we create a collective bargaining forum, it means actors and crew and background actors will forever be, subject to a contract and not a participant in a contract.
So you're stuck between a rock and a hard places in two areas, in terms of the legislation and also in terms of the kind of body that you can form. Because right now you are not allowed to operate as a union, but as a guild, which I'm assuming doesn't come with all the leverage that would be part of a union.
You describe it very well. So obviously, a SAGA starting point would be how to make sure that the Labor Relations Act is being amended so that freelancers have the right to collective bargain. And, that you mentioned that earlier, but as a more immediate intervention, SAGA is able to advise actors about where their contracts are deficient. Once you become aware of certain things, you will, as I did, once you start to see where the deficiencies are and where you are absolutely being exploited and abused, it's like taking the red pill. The red pill moment is where you can suddenly start to see the matrix for what it is. And once you see the matrix for what it is, two things happen. One is that you can never unsee it. And two, you learn at that point to become an activist.
I hear you, but it's still a very precarious and treacherous road because of the fluid nature of your employment. If you are seen to be too not flexible and not accommodating, then that compromises immediate earning potential. It compromises your short-term ability to take care of yourself. So even though you might see the red pill, you may not necessarily want to take the red pill because it might compromise your earning possibility for the short term.
Yeah, and I think we must manage our expectations when it comes to what are actors prepared to do as activists. And SAGA will always, firstly, protect an actor's right to work. And, this is an important point I need to mention. When you look at our Constitution itself, the right to fair labor practice, the right to unionize, and to engage in industrial action, these are constitutional rights. So when SAGA approaches the question of what rights should an actor have, we are approaching it from the side of our Constitution itself. And I would say
outside of what labor legislation says. Is that right? Okay.
The failure is in statute. A statutory failure can be remedied because it has to be remedied in line with what the Constitution dictates. And besides, aside from the Constitution itself, you have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And South Africa is a signatory to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And the right to fair labor practice is enshrined as a human right. So this is something that SAGA is promoting. And yes, you're quite right to go back to your question. There are people who will be afraid that if they make a very loud noise about the injustice of the sector, that they may lose work. Which is why you need to belong to an organization. It is the organization that lobbies on your behalf. We carry the mandate from you as a member. What you don't want to have are, hundreds and hundreds of actors who are going around and shouting for change And if you are very prominent as an actor, as every politician will want to say, well, why didn't you come and tell us what the problem is? And you're given the opportunity, you have the platform, you arrive there, and now you have a mouthful of teeth because you cannot describe what is the transformation you need to have. And the next question is, just because you are this very famous actor, what is your mandate?
Okay.
Who do you speak for?
Got it. Got it. So am I hearing right that SAGA then helps to create that future end state?
That's right.
What the future of the industry needs to look like.
Correct. We can describe that and define.
And because you have a membership base, you have people that have said, speak for me.
That's
you have
right.
a mandate to represent my interests. Okay. So how is SAGA set up? You brought in the constitution, and I wasn't sure whether you're referring to the constitution of SAGA or to South Africa.
Okay, yes.
So from a governance and constitution point of view of SAGA, how is this organization set up in terms of compliance and governance and your leadership structures?
That is such a critical factor because, given in any given industry crisis, you'll find 2 or 3 organizations that suddenly spring up overnight. During COVID, there were like 12, none of which exist today. But SAGA was established 15 years ago. We are run by a team of 12 volunteers. So everyone is committed to the vision we have for a transformed creative sector. And we rely on our members to give us the mandate. And yes, every year we have our AGM. Every year we report back to our members about our financials, and there will be a chairman's report and a treasurer's report and a legal report. And we will report transparently to our members, the very people who nominated us into this structure. And we have EXCO members in Cape Town. We have one in Durban, and then we have the rest up in Johannesburg. So we are covering the areas of the industry that are most active and where most of the exploitation and abuse is taking place.
You've covered a lot of the good foundational blocks for a nonprofit organization in terms of compliance. But one of the things which you haven't spoke about, which I saw on your website, is the PBO status. Do you maybe want to explain what that is and why it's beneficial as a nonprofit organization to have a PBO status?
Yeah, it is. These things work together, and you can be a nonprofit organization. There's also the PBO status that there are thresholds that you have to cross. You have to meet certain requirements, and that takes constant reporting.
Absolutely.
So it means that we have to prove that our organization is being run in a transparent manner, that we are managing our finances in a certain way, and that we actually have impact with the constituency that we are occupying. So our PBO status is also very important to us. And it means that the Department of Social Development is constantly in contact with us just to make sure that we remain compliant. And this is a huge thing for us as SAGA, because we have to make sure that as much as we are carrying a message of transformation, we have to remain compliant within the law as well.
Absolutely. I think for me, one of the most attractive things about the PBO status is the fact that you are able to offer Section 18A certificates to donors, partners, and then that makes their contribution to your organization a tax deductible, which makes it very attractive from a financial point of view in terms of people that want to support you financially.
You're quite right. We are able to offer that to donors. In fact, it has opened the door to a large pool of people who want to invest, perhaps not invest, but certainly to donate responsibly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There is a problem in South Africa with organizations, and some of them are really, really big charitable organizations that take in millions of rand every year. And when you look at their organizational structure, you'll find in many cases that there is one person who signs off of the bank account. And transactions between the organization's bank account and their personal bank account are actually just one click away.
Major red flag.
Yeah, and this is what happens. So obviously government is going to try very hard to clamp down on that. And for us, that is what our PBO status allows us to do, is we can provide transparency to our donors to say, yes, you are getting a Section 18A certificate, but it also means that you have the reassurance that what you are donating to is going to be delivered.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Jack. That was really, really very insightful. So as we close, what would you say are we've established that the work of SAGA is very long-term in terms of lobbying legislation to change and workers' rights to be brought into the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. But in terms of your short-term goals, what are they and how do people connect with the organization?
Our goal is to ensure that there is a very smooth and a very efficient and quick transition and an amendment to the Labor Relations Act. It's going to take a massive amount of work in order to achieve that. We'll have to deploy whatever levers of influence we can at the highest level in Parliament, the Portfolio Committee, using NEDLAC as well. And for that, we need to prove that membership is what's driving the change. So when we say SAGA thrives on its members, it's because it is membership numbers that gives us the leverage we need when we're motivating for legislative amendments. So that would be the first thing that we're doing, and we're well on our way to achieving that in 2026. For people to become members, people can actually see and access the downloadable membership form on SAGA's website. And SAGA Actors is what you'll find when you're looking for us on social media. On Facebook and on Instagram as well. We are very active there, posting updates about the work that we are doing, the lobbying that we are doing. We are putting out messaging to inform actors about what the state of the industry is. So when we're involved in an actors event where we are networking or we are explaining what are the developments in legislation, what did NEDLAC say, what did COSATU say, we can update people. And so we are a very powerful source and a resource of information so that actors can understand what kind of industry am I working in. And for me, that's the critical part. There is no point in actors talking about the deficiencies and the failures of an industry if you yourself are not involved in fixing it.
Jack, thank you. This was such a lovely conversation. Such a treat once again to be able to speak to one of my favorite people from Isidingo. And we wish you well with the endeavors of SAGA and transforming the industry because, it's about time. We can't be repeating the same cycles from the past. It's time and people are now coming into this industry intentionally. Yeah. So let's make it a space where everybody can thrive and build sustainable financial livelihoods for their families. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching the NPO Bootcamp Arts and Culture Edition. Please don't forget to like and subscribe our YouTube channels so we will notify you when our next episode is live. See you next time.